Rev up your engines!
Since I'm always warning people not to buy Nissans, Nissan is closing their U.S. operations for 2 days in January to save money. Hey, I got an even better idea. To save everyone else money, close it forever. And then people won't have to buy those things and throw their money fixing them as they break. Now, this affects all workers, and they're not getting paid for their time off either. I guess that's how Nissan's saving money. They're going to be closed January 2nd and 3rd. Well, I guess if you're one of their workers, you could say, oh, great, I got an extended holiday. January 1st, most people go back to work on the 2nd. Well, they're going to get the 2nd and the 3rd off, too. But they're not getting paid, so it really isn't that much of a vacation for them. This affects 14,500 of their employees here in the United States. Nissan sales were 15% down in November and 33% down for Infiniti. Same company, just a different name. So all you people out there have been listening to Scotty all the years and telling you to stay away from Nissan vehicles. Unfortunately, there's workers that get involved here that lose their jobs. That's what happens when companies don't build good products. I don't say go out and buy a car just because somebody's got a job. You get stuck with a crappy job and your money gets thrown down the toilet. Hey, you don't want to support poor companies. You want to support the companies that build stuff that lasts. Otherwise, let's face it, a lot of stuff in our societies is cheap crap already. And if people keep supporting that cheap crap, it's only going to get cheaper and crappier. Maybe you'll buy a car and it'll last like a balloon for a few weeks and then it'll deflate itself. So, too bad. I say, don't buy crappy products. Here's something that comes as no surprise, but hey, you remember the Ford Focus, Fiestas, had those flawed dual clutch transmissions. I had some customers with them and yes, they were junk. Well, now the truth is out. All kinds of people knew they were flawed. From the people building them into the factory to the people who designed them, it was a known item. Hey, you can't make that many cars and keep it quiet. People know what's going on. Generally, if you got two people, you can't keep a secret. Well, there's a lot more than two people involved in this one. This covers more than 2 million cars that were sold over a decade of time. So more than 10 years, 2 million cars. You're not going to be able to keep this a secret. People who were involved in making them said it was cheap to manufacture and easy to assemble, but since it was a dry clutch design, it didn't cool itself right, led to overheating problems, and they self-destructive. It's leading to $3 billion in recall expenses, plus all the legal expenses. You got to pay the lawyers for this stuff. Lawsuits that are still going on that are pending, so it could even get a lot higher. Engineers and other talked to the Detroit Free Press, and they said it was just a spiral out of control thing. They were worried that they were going to lose their jobs if they told people about it. It hits the fan. Well, it hit the fan now, and it's all over the place. It wouldn't be as big of a mess if they would have owned up to it in the first place. A lot of Ford customers had problems. They were told, oh, well, nah, it's not. They all act that way. I saw that with some of my customers. They took them in. They said they act that way. And I told them, yeah, they act that way, but they're not supposed to act that way. These transmissions shudder. They shift weird. And one design flaws, they'll shift into neutral. That's part of the programming. They keep it from burning out. You'd be driving around, they just shift into neutral and you'd lose power. I mean, this isn't something you want in a transmission. And they knew it was happening. Just like GM knew that they had those faulty ignition switches, but they just kept their mouth shut about it. And hilarious enough, one of Ford's defenses is that they're saying that people are just making frivolous lawsuits, take advantage of Ford so the lawyers can get money out of it. They were selling these things to try to cover their own rear ends, making them cheaper, and then not fixing them right. And then they're having their lawyers say, oh, well, there's nothing wrong with this. It's just these other lawyers are greedy. All this information recently come out from 7 Ford insiders that were interviewed by the Detroit Free Press, which is a pretty open-minded paper. And really, I've been saying this stuff for a long time. Stay away from new technology. Dual clutch transmission system. Hey, the Europeans have made it before and they had some pretty expensive blunders they made. Well, Ford just fell right into that pit, but didn't admit it to anybody until now. Of course, they have to because the cat's out of the bag running down the street. And of course, they tried things like software updates to say that's going to fix it, but that, as it usually is in transmission problems, is just a band-aid. Some of them shifted a little bit better. I had a customer that had that done and it didn't shift quite as bad, but it still didn't work perfectly because these things are just physically breaking down inside because they were all just designed wrong in the first place. Stay away from radical change, new technology, until it's been out a while. and it's proven itself. Madman says, do they put those stupid maintenance required lights in vehicles specifically to scare older people? My mom thought her car was going to fall apart. Basically, they want to scare everybody to get you to go back to the dealer so they can charge you a bunch of money for doing very little work. That's why they got all those lights on. They didn't have those lights when I was a young mechanic. People had trusted mechanics like my grandfather and then me when I was learning. They didn't have all this modern hoopla trying to sell people stuff all the time by putting lights that say, you need this maintenance, you need that maintenance. And a lot of times the cars, it just comes on every 15,000 miles out of the blue. It's programmed. So there's absolutely nothing wrong with the car at all. If you change your oil and stuff regularly, you might not need to do anything. But they just do it to scare everyone. It's a sales gimmick that all the manufacturers jumped on the bandwagon to try to sell you stuff. So learn about your car. Maybe you might find out that, hey, mine comes on every 50,000 miles. And usually you can push a button on the dash and there's a certain sequence of buttons you push and then it resets itself for another 15,000 miles. So learn how to do that on your car. Anybody can Google it and learn how to do it on their own car. Jay Linkowitz says, Scotty, I recently put a cold air intake on my 16 Honda EXT. Seems I've lost 5 miles a gallon in town. Yeah, that's why I tell people, don't use those cold air intakes. I made a whole video about why they're a joke. They put them on race cars. One, they don't care about gas mileage. And two, they are dyno tuned before the race. I guess nowadays it's gotten so high tech. The computer's giving feedback to the guys in the pit while they're racing. And they'll even be modifying computer stuff while they're driving down the road. So, they're continually adjusting things. You got a car, you just bolted something on, you think it's going to work right. It won't. If you wanted that to work right, you'd have to go to a tuner who had a 5-gas dynamometer and know how to reprogram computers on Hondas to set it up. And you'd have to tell them what you wanted. When you start modifying stuff, it gets really complicated. Me, I'd say take that stupid thing off and go back to your factory air box, unless you want to spend a whole bunch of money modifying it correctly. Colin Check says, hey, I'm in college in Indiana. Love classics and looking for a first personal car. Found a classic car. Run! If you're looking for your first car, you do not want to buy a classic car. Classic cars are for guys who have had cars their whole lives. They like puttering around with them, and they don't drive them that much. I got a lot of customers with classic cars. And you know what they average? They average less than like 1,000, 1,200 miles a year on those cars. You don't go out and buy a classic car and drive it as your first personal car. You're going to be spending so much time fixing it, or you're going to be worried if you spend a fortune, like some guys I know, they'll go out and they'll buy a classic Mustang for $75,000. They're crapping in their pants every time they go someplace because it's very easy to steal those classic cars. Their anti-theft systems are just a lock and steering column that a kid with a screwdriver can break. And they're also old as the hill. Things are going to wear out and break. No, don't do it as a first. Later on, yeah, you want a fun toy car, get one for a weekend toy, but don't get it as your first personal car. That would be a big mistake. I've seen people do that, and to a man and woman, every single one of them was crying down the road later. Baranthus says, Scotty, I have a 2014 Lexus IS350. Recently, when I go to fill up gas, the pump stops after 4 to 5 seconds. Your gas tank isn't venting correctly. Now, realize, say your car's 3/4 empty. That means 3/4 of your gas tank's full of air. Something's got to be in there. When you fill up with gas, that air has to go someplace. When I was a young mechanic, it just went out to the atmosphere. Nobody cared, but that's seen as pollution these days. It has to go through the venting system of the car, goes to what's called the charcoal canister, and that's supposed to filter out the hydrocarbons, and then pure air comes out the other end. You could have a problem with that system. You might need a new evap canister vent valve or a whole new canister assembly. Some of them you can only buy the canister assembly with a valve built in, so you might have to buy one of those. That's generally what goes wrong, but also check those hoses. Take the gas cap off, you see there's little hoses inside. Sometimes spiders build little nests in there. Rocks or mud get stuck in there. Sometimes they get hit with a rock and broken. They have a hole or something in them. You want to check all that stuff first, because it's not as simple as you might think when it comes to changing these canisters. Some canisters you got to drop the gas tank because they hit them on top of the gas tank, and that's an expensive endeavor. See if that's wearing out. See if it's an easy thing to go through, and pray it's something that easy. Or maybe you see a spider nest in it and you get one of those little air blasters that clean computer keys and stuff and blast it in and blow the spider web out. Now, I fixed them that way, but I got an air compressor with a big old air hose. Puts out 150 psi and I'll blow the spiders to kingdom come. That tip says, I got a 2014 Toyota Corolla, 59,000 miles, manual transmission, but it used. Never had a transmission change. Do I change it or will I have problems? Oh, no, you can definitely change it now. Standard transmissions are just splash lubrication. Standard transmission just gears, there's oil in them, and the oil spin and pick the gears, splash it around. So I call it splash lubrication, and that's what lubricates. An automatic transmission, on the other hand, has little nooks and crannies and electronic computer parts and an oil pump, just like your engine has an oil pump, to build pressure to flow it through. And if you change a dirty one, you can have problems. But a standard, no, change it now. And it's not that bad, 59,000 miles. On my own vehicles, I'm only changing them every 60, 80,000 miles in a standard transmission because there's so little wear. It's just to keep the fluid from getting gunky over time that you can change it out. So I do it now. You won't have any problems. Me up says, Scotty, I got a question about a Yamaha YBR 250 motorcycle. Does anyone have experience with them? Are they reliable or piles of junk? Yamaha makes great motorcycles. They have for a really long time. Yeah, they make pianos too. Really good pianos. But a lot of times guys beat the heck out of those things. Now, if you're talking about buying a brand new one, go right ahead. They're excellent motorcycles. Take care of it. It can last you a really long time because most people don't drive motorcycles hundreds of thousands of miles like cars. Basically last a lifetime if you take care of them and don't fall off and break your legs on them. You gotta know what you're doing on 2 wheels. It's not like 4. Any idiot can drive a car with 4 wheels, but with 2, the idiots generally get thrown off and they don't drive them anymore. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.